Okay, good afternoon. My name is Brandon Jones, and I am the program manager for the fellowship programs at the Environmental Protection Agency. And so we won't be talking a lot about space, and we won't have the cool videos and blast off and the cool soundtracks. However, we will be sharing with you some information, mainly post-secondary information from a lot of the science or STEM-focused agencies in the federal family. Just to begin, and I hope I get there we go. Last year, we're about a little over a year old. The Interagency Work Group for Graduate Fellowships began. It's an ad hoc work group. There was no directive from the top down. This was the program directors and managers of the graduate fellowship programs started to meet monthly, and as you see on the slide, those three goals there in the blue, to discuss common issues, share efficient mechanisms, and of course begin to partner. And a prime example of how we're beginning to gel and the information that we share and how important it is that we get together monthly. On the way over here from the train, Giselle and I spent the entire time in the car talking about recent issues on our graduate application announcements that just closed, and we have all kinds of issues. And so we've never before had a forum where the agencies could share this information and talk about best practices and hurdles and obstacles and how policies and such. And so I also want to thank Mabel for inviting us, and of course she's been part of this group. So the 10, and I hope I didn't miss anyone, the 10 agencies that have been represented so far in the group are there, their logos are there. And our mission at the top is to strengthen and ongoing the future diverse pools of highly trained scientists and engineers, and basically enhancing and sustaining the competitiveness of the United States in STEM areas. And so, in keeping with the mission of the conference, supporting the STEM workforce of tomorrow, that's what we're all trying to do. So the format of the panel is I'll just give an overview of EPA's graduate fellowship program. Also, I'll be speaking about the undergrad program, and then we'll move to our other three representatives. We have Dr. Giselle Muller-Parker, who is the program director at National Science Foundation for the Graduate Research Fellowship Program, Henry Murdaugh at the Department of Transportation, and Ray Ali from USDA. And so we have the four of us that will be sharing information. Hopefully we can get through our pieces in 30 to 40 minutes and have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So the Environmental Protection Agency, of course, the mission is to protect human health and the environment. In the Office of Research and Development are where all the higher ed programs sit. So our higher ed programs sit in basically the science directorate of the agency and not in the Office of Education. The K through 12 programs do sit in the Office of Education, which is in the administrator's office. And there, as you can imagine, are a lot of politics that happen at that level, and we're kind of safely tucked down into the Research and Development Office, and it brings its own issues. But the political nature, usually, we are immune from. So we have, at the undergrad level, we have the Greater Research Opportunities Program, which is a competition, and the P3, People, Prosperity, and the Planet, which is a sustainable design competition for undergraduates. We have the STAR at the graduate level, the Science to Achieve Results graduate program. That's kind of our flagship fellowship program. And Marshall Scholarship, which is a collaboration with the UK for environmental studies for graduate students. At the postgrad level, we don't run competitions for AAAS and ASPH fellows, but we manage the placement of those fellows for the entire agency. So when you're talking about higher ed and ORD, we have the flow from undergrad to graduate to what we would say postgrad or professional development opportunities, all there in the science directorate. So the focus is on science and scientific research, and of course policy that interfaces with EPA's mission, but it's also about supporting these students. And if you look at the graphic there on the left-hand side, we kind of sit with our undergrad and graduate programs. If you're talking about, or you're thinking about students moving through a watershed, and we like to say watershed instead of a pipeline, because there are so many entry and exit points and so many different places where these individuals come and leave, that it's more so applicable, we think, to say watershed than pipeline. But anyway, so we kind of sit in the college, graduate, and the career prep area of the watershed. But of course, with the mission or the focus is to have an ample supply of these environmentally trained scientists to move into the environmental workforce there. We would love for them to come and work at EPA, but we would also like for some of them maybe to work on Capitol Hill, but that's a whole nother thing. So the graduate fellowship program is a graphic at the top. It actually is only about 16, 17 years old, and it's a very competitive program. We only fund around 7 to 8% of our total applications. We received this past year over 1,500 applications. We're only going to be able to fund around 80 to 100. It's always budget dependent, as well as some other factors. The undergraduate program is a little more not as competitive. We fund almost a third of applications that have come in. And over the past 5 or so years, we've seen an increase in the number of applications and the number of awards that we've been able to make, which we're really happy about. But what happened, the reason we saw this increase is because around 2003, there was a policy change. This program used to be minority only, and there was a policy change within EPA to restrict, to not use race and ethnicity as a selection criteria. And so the decision was made to have a financial threshold for institutions, with the thought that most of the HBCUs, tribal colleges, HSIs would still fall under that financial threshold, and that threshold is $35 million or less right here of federal funding. So if any institution receives $35 million or less in federal research and development dollars, not federal, but research and development, those students are eligible to apply for this undergraduate program. This program is very unique. Both STAR and GROW are very unique because they're environmentally focused. But this program is unique because it offers a paid summer internship at any EPA facility or in the country or the properties. And we fund students over the last 2 years at up to this amount. And there's the breakdown of the funding. We selected for the first time 40 fellows we funded last year who started their fellowship this year. And those are the topic areas that we kind of, we do actually fund in, and they're a little more general. When you move to STAR, the topic areas become a little more detailed because the expectancy is, of course, that the graduate students are going to be a little more farther along in their professional careers and a little more sophisticated in their application processes. But we fund up to 2 years for master's students, 3 years for doctoral students, and we provide up to $42 grand a year with the breakdown there. And that's commiserate, and we actually were funding around $37 a year, but as we started to talk with some of our other federal partners in the graduate area, we realized that in order to become competitive and have the environmental workforce have the light shown in it as other disciplines, we needed to of course, raise our funding levels. At that time, we also received a small bump in our baseline as far as budget, so we were able to keep the same number of awards but at a higher level, so we were happy about that. We selected 110 last year fellows, and the largest areas over the last 2 years for applications were global change and social sciences, and here are some of the other areas or topic areas that we fund under. Our funding announcements are annual in nature, and we have 2 levels of review in EPA. I'm almost finished. We have an external review, as most agencies do, and we also have an internal review that some agencies don't have, where we have EPA experts actually review applications that have passed peer review successfully. And so that's the review criteria. Of course, this is all publicly available in our announcements, etc. And I'm not sure if I can access these are hyperlinks. I just wanted to give a few, that's great, just a few case studies, and if they don't come up, that's all right. These are former fellows. Dr. Ashanti Johnson actually is a good friend of mine, and she was a fellow way before I even came to EPA. But she just received a couple of years ago the Presidential Award for Mentoring in Science Education. Dr. Cyrus Wadia is currently at OSTP at the White House. He's from his fellowship and some other support. He has a startup company looking at photovoltaic cells for solar panels, energy use, and he was asked to come to work at the OSTP on energy policy and such. And Dr. Erica Holloman, very involved in environmental justice issues, just received her PhD. She was a former GROW fellow, but she's very heavy into the environmental justice movement, and just received an EPA CARE grant to continue that work with communities in Virginia and North Carolina. So those were just some kind of case studies. I'm sorry that the internet didn't work, but that's fine. And so I wanted to leave you with EPA's graduate fellowship and undergrad information. And if you wouldn't mind, we'll take questions of all of us at the end once all of us have presented. So next up, Giselle and NSF's programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Oh, let's see. Okay, what's really, there is a connection to space because the NSF and the Graduate Research Fellowship Program, which started just over 60 years ago, was in response to Sputnik and the need to develop the science and engineering workforce in the US. So the Graduate Research Fellowship Program basically is a STEM workforce development program by funding individuals to get their graduate degrees. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. So we've actually, it's very interesting. Our program is 60 years old. This year we will make the 60th set of fellowship offers. And what's really interesting is to really think about what our goals are. And they really haven't changed for the past 60 years. They are to select individuals early in their careers who show the potential to become scientists and engineers that can contribute to the science and engineering enterprise in the country. The other one is to broaden participation and to support those who are traditionally underrepresented in science and engineering. So there's some of our website links are there so you can find out more about it. But the basic program overview is, as I said, this year we will celebrate our 60th year. We have we're up to almost 50,000 fellows. Are there any fellows in the room? Okay, often there are. We have many Nobel laureates. Stephen Chu is an NSF fellow, as is John Holdren, and quite a few people actually in the government. And basically what we find is that our students tend to have higher PhD completion rates and become very productive scientists and engineers, and that we do contribute to enhanced diversity in the STEM workforce. So our purpose, again, is to focus on the individual. And this is really different because we're not giving a grant to support a specific research project at all. We're saying, look at these people who are applying, and the first time they can apply is as an undergrad, as a senior undergrad. And we're saying, given just 6 pages of essays and letters of recommendations and transcripts, does this person show the potential to be a leader in our country in science and engineering? So that is really the goal. And if the student proposes something and does something else, it doesn't matter. And in fact, we accept applications in all fields of science and engineering supported by the National Science Foundation. So it's a 5-year award. And what's very interesting about this fellowship is that they can use they can use the 3 years of support in any combination over that 5-year period. So they can incorporate TAing and other types of opportunities and internship opportunities into their programs. The stipend's $30,000, and there is a cost of education allowance to the university. This is open only to U.S. citizens, permanent residents, and nationals. And it is focused on early career grad students. So students who are only in, at most, the second year of their graduate education, whether it's master's or PhD, are eligible to apply. So a student could, or an applicant, because you could be out of school for 15 years and apply if you have a bachelor's degree. An applicant is applying as an individual. They don't have to be at an institution. And they can apply either as a senior undergrad or any time after that, during the first year of graduate school or during the fall semester of the second year of graduate school. And we now are having our fellows be at accredited U.S. institutions. That's a fairly new feature. Before we had some who were studying abroad. Now we're encouraging that those international research opportunities be developed through collaborations between U.S. institutions and other labs and other universities abroad. Okay, so what's interesting about this is the fellow gets the money and then decides where to go to school and tells us where they're going, and then we give the school the money to support them. So it's really meant to be catalytic, that you're taking these young people, most of whom are at 4-year schools or smaller schools, and saying, here's a fellowship to go to graduate school. Now they do have to be enrolled in graduate school by the fall following the award. And the other really unique feature of this, which has been this way for 60 years, is that there's no service requirement. Their only job is to be a graduate student, to get a degree. They do give us annual activity reports, but this is really meant to be something that stimulates them to go on to graduate school. We were presidential priority in 2010. Traditionally, we've been giving about 900 to 1,000 fellowships a year. The last 2 years, we've given 2,000 each, and this year we're predicting another 2,000. We just closed our application. We have over 12,000 applications, and which is about what we had last year as well. And so given, if we can give 2,000, our success rate is about 17%. So we can actually, one of the beauties of our program is that we have data that spans 60 years on all these individuals, in addition to knowing sort of how fields evolve over time. And so we've actually been able to track how, when computer science first came about, actually, used to be part of the physical sciences. So we have some really fabulous data which we're willing to share with people, so do contact me if you're interested in this. But what you can see from this is that right now, about 60% of our applicants are in 2 fields, engineering and life sciences. And we tell this to our colleagues at NSF because we want them to get their fields to apply more. So the social sciences and are fairly, it's a small directorate at NSF, but they actually have a proportionally larger share of the applications, which is interesting. Okay, so we review these using the merit review criteria of NSF, intellectual merit and broader impacts. And what's really interesting is that here we are having undergraduates use the NSF and think about and write their essays in terms of the NSF review criteria, which is really a novel concept. They're actually learning about this early in their career. And we give them a lot of guidance on this, but those are our review criteria. And we ask the panelists who come in to evaluate them on this basis, and really for their potential to succeed given these 2 review criteria. And also what's really important for us is outreach to small schools, to minority serving institutions, HBCUs, So we work very hard to make sure our panelists are very diverse and represent a wide range of institutions. So if you are interested in finding out about how to register panelists from your schools for GRFP, please email me again. Okay, so the fellows, we don't just sort of give them the money and say, see you in 5 years. We do require annual activity reports, which we have the advisors look at. And we are evaluated by external contractors. And we also have committee of visitors that evaluate how we review and then also make suggestions. And one of the interesting suggestions has been, how do you we need to stop just preparing students to go into academia, and we need to provide more opportunities for other types of careers such as industry, government, and other things. So one of the things we've been trying to do is increase panelists from those areas and think about what kinds of professional development opportunities we might offer to these fellows once they are our fellows. So if you want to find out more about it, there's our information, and my email is gtmuller@nsf.gov. You can find me fairly easily. And so that's a brief overview, and I'll be happy to answer questions later.
Now we have Henry Murdoch from Department of Transportation.
Good afternoon. Good morning. Excuse me, good afternoon. I'm Henry Murdoch, and I'm Program Manager, Universities and Graduate Programs for the U.S. Department of Transportation in the Federal Highway Administration modes. For those of you who are not familiar with transportation, we have 10 modes. The federal highways, 1 FAA, pipeline and hazardous materials, motor carrier, NHTSA, and 2 others I can't remember specifically. We're housed in Federal Highway, and the program that I'm going to talk about today is the Dwight David Eisenhower Transportation Fellowship Program. Excuse me, I have it. The mission of Universities and Grants programs is to advance transportation education, research, and workforce development. The key programs that are housed in my particular office are the Dwight David Eisenhower Transportation Fellowship Program, the Garrett Morgan Transportation Technology Education Program. We do have intermodal partnerships for all the modes to try to find and access qualified students to enter the transportation field. And we partner with other student DOT transportation pipeline programs, as well as try to facilitate transportation workforce development, interagency, intra-agency, and private sector. For the Eisenhower program, it was established in Congress, so it is a legislative program. It is a line item in our transportation legislation. Started in 1991 under Safety Lou, and was started in 1990 was actually ICE-T. It was reauthorized under T21, and is currently reauthorized under Safety Lou, which we are now in our 2nd year of extensions for Safety Lou. Hopefully we'll have a new transportation bill next year with a new name. Hopefully we'll be reauthorized under that as well. Currently we've had over 2,000 Eisenhower Fellowship recipients over the past 14, 15 years. We have an annual budget of about $2.2 million a year. We provide fellowship funding for tuition, living stipend, and TRB attendance, which is our Transportation Research Board annual meeting, which is our national transportation, actually it's our international transportation conference we have every year in DC. At the Omni Showroom, at the Washington Hilton, and the Marriott Wardman Park. So we basically fill up all 3 hotels with about 12,000 participants from around the world each year. And our students are allowed to come participate and present their research, and also a network of partners in the industry. We have 8 fellowship categories. Today I will talk with you about the graduate fellowship category and a little bit about our MIHE categories, which are the historically black colleges and universities, the tribal colleges, and the Hispanic serving institutions. The eligibility requirements for our graduate fellowship is that you are a full-time student studying some type of transportation-related disciplines, and we have about 50. At one time we had a list of 101, and they range from public policy to natural civil engineering, to computer engineering, to urban planning. So we have a wide array of disciplines that we consider to be transportation related. And we've seen an influx of MBA because of financial accounting, things of that sort that we need when we talk about funding mega projects. So when I tell students is if you look at the Department of Transportation and look at all of the type of disciplines it takes to run the agency, those are the type of disciplines we also need to run the industry. Even journalism, we need people who can write so that our legislation doesn't be like stereo instructions, so you can actually interpret what you are to do in your programs. So we have room for everyone under the transportation umbrella. We compete at a local and national level. Our MIHE categories compete at the local level, which means for our HBCUs, tribal colleges, and Hispanic serving institutions, we allow them to run their own competition on campus. We give them a set of guidelines, they submit to us their plan, a certain time of year, they compete, they announce the fellowships, and they send to me their recommended selections, and I verify the eligibility criteria, and based on funding, we fund those students that they recommend. We feel that gives those students a better opportunity also to compete versus competing nationally with 3,000 other students. GPA's criteria recommendations, and it's kind of interesting with recommendations. My students are starting to understand the panel, which we have a national selection panel that actually review the applications for our graduate fellowships. They can recognize a form letter recommendation. So those students who have more of a thoughtful recommendation tend to score higher, which makes sense. The teacher can talk more to your type of research, the type of student you are, versus saying you're a great student, I like him, he should get the fellowship. So we talk about that. That's a very important criteria that you should not overlook when looking for your recommendation and who provide those type of recommendations for you. Work experience, also a part of the proposal is they have to give us a 2-page document on what they propose to do and why is it relevant to transportation. That's also a critical criteria how well they rank at the graduate level. And they must be a U.S. citizen or be qualified to study in the U.S., which means they have I-20 ID. Typically, we start to get more into the J-1 visa. We don't really try to fine line that, but as long as you have a student visa to study in this country, you are allowed to apply for the graduate fellowship. The process says that I post the application on grants.gov, and every student hates grants.gov because it's geared more to institutions, not individual students. I can't tell you the number of calls I get about trying to find a form 450 for a student. You don't have that unless you're an institution, but we're required by law to use grants.gov. And we also post it on our website. Students submit the application by the deadline, which is usually mid-February. The application is reviewed by the National Selection Panel. They rate and rank each application that's submitted to me for compliance and eligibility review, and then we'll make awards based on availability of funding. Currently, we're under a CR. So by April, we will have 340/360th of our total budget. So that impacts how many fellowships we can award until we get a full transportation bill. The benefits are that the students' education are funded. That was one of the impetus for the program, that the cost of higher education continues to skyrocket, and we lose a lot of talented students. They enter the workforce with less debt, gain valuable transportation research experience. For the employee, they get to identify these top students early through networking opportunities and research capabilities. Less on-the-job training required, because if they're pursuing the track, they're pretty much well-versed in transportation-related issues and come to your workforce kind of workforce ready. And it's cheap labor and continuity, because one of our categories is what we call a GRUF project, that anyone in DOT or any of our partners may have a project that they would like to hire a student to complete. A lot of times it's research projects. So students get published before they even get their degrees, but it's a big help to professors who may not have the time or the staff to conduct the research, and it's a great experience for the students. For our MIHEs, the deadline is a little bit different. It's April 1 that each university needs to submit to the office their recommendations, and we try to make awards by May. Graduate fellowships are 2 and 3 years. Master students can be up to 2 years. PhD students can be up to 3 years. The max allowable for a PhD is $103,500. We send all the money to the school up front. The student receives no funding. We can hold the school accountable. It's a little harder to hold the students accountable. For the master student, I think the max is $61,500. That includes a $10,000 cap per year for tuition, up to $24,000, $2,000 a month for PhD students and $1,750 a month for master's students for their fellowship, and a $1,500 travel scholarship to come to DC to TRD every year. The range of fellowships range from $5,000 to $103,000. And typically for our MIHEs, the average fellowship amount is about $7,500 to $10,000. That is my contact information and my staff with our website that you can get additional information. Each of you may also, I did not bring a lot of them, I apologize, may have this brochure that also has our website on the back. And I also have one or two photos that has the complete information of disciplines, certain articles, and certain procedures that we also work to use in administering the program. Thank you.
And finally, Ray Ali from USDA.
Good afternoon. I'm Ray Ali, and I serve as the National Education Program Leader with USDA, the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. Part of my responsibility areas is to give leadership to fellowship and scholarship programs through the agency that span from the undergraduate through the postdoctoral levels. The National Institute of Food and Agriculture is one of the primary components of the research, education, and economics mission of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The mission is up there, but when we talk about agriculture, the food and agricultural sciences within NIFA, or the agency, if you will, we have a number of focus areas. The traditional agriculture of animal and plant sciences, but there's also education, bioenergy, climate change, obesity, hunger, and nutrition. Those are just some of the few primary areas that we focus a lot of our competitive grants in. There are 3 programs that I'd like to share with you today. The first is the Multicultural Scholars, which focuses on with a focus on underrepresented students at the undergraduate level. The National Needs Graduate Fellowships, which focuses on master's and doctoral degrees, and pre-doc and post-doc is evident in the NIFA fellowships. So, as stated earlier, the Multicultural Scholars Program, and I'm somewhat sensitive to time here and to allow time for questions towards the end, but the Multicultural Scholars Program provides opportunities for students to pursue either the bachelor's degree in food and agricultural sciences or their DVM degree. And that is through institutions that would apply for that grant opportunity. The RFA, the request for applications for the grant announcement for the solicitations, usually comes out in June. The total funding, as is in the fiscal year 12 budget that is pending, to my understanding, it's about $1.1 million. The range of awards is there. The funding rate is about 1 out of 5. For the National Needs Fellowships, again in the food and agricultural sciences, from graduate master's degrees through doctoral education. Colleges and universities are the eligible institutions to apply for these awards. The usual funding for that is about $3.6 million, and the range of awards go from about $4,500 through $260,000, with the competition or the funding rate at about 25%. And I would mention that with both the Multicultural Scholars Program and the National Needs Graduate Fellowships, that there are special experiential learning opportunities or international research and training allowances specifically afforded for students who benefit from those respective programs. One of the primary flagship programs, if you will, within the National Institute of Food and Agriculture is AFRI, or the Agricultural and Food Research Initiative. There is a set aside of funding for that program, which I think equates to about $264 million. There's a set aside of about $12 million for pre-doc and post-doc fellowships. Students in this program apply directly. Institutions can apply, but students themselves apply directly for fellowships. We are currently in the second year of funding for this program as it is. Our total funding for this cycle is about $12 million. And that is the information that I have to share with you with regards to our undergraduate through postdoc programs. Thank you. And with that, I'll hand it over to Dr. Brandon.
So now's the time. We'll just open it up for questions and answers. I would like to say that with Mabel here, we do have 50% of our group. So I think that's enough for a quorum, so we can say what we want to say. Any questions for the panel? Comments? Over here.
Thank you very much for your presentations. I guess one quick question that I had, given the current budget environment, how do you see, your FY 2012, FY 2013 budgets being affected? And second question, in light of that, what other strategies are your agencies using to really recruit and retain top talent in your industries?
We're still hopeful that that we will get to be able to offer 2,000 fellowship awards. I think for us, the strategy has been quite interesting. We were pretty much a small unit within the Education and Human Resources Directorate at NSF. And one thing that has come about, which is really, really important, is that we have now become cross-cutting across the whole agency. So what we've done is said the fellowships can no longer just be this unit that gives out fellowships, but it now must be of central importance to the entire agency, and we must have everyone in the agency from the research directorates involved. So in fact, this afternoon, our working group is meeting with representatives from all the different directorates. And I think that's really important, is that the agency as a whole recognize the importance of the fellowships, and that's really critical. I think what's also really great about our group is that we talk to each other, and we come up with ideas of what we offer the nation in terms of providing all of our different fellowship services. What are common themes? What do we provide, and can we put out a consistent message to the government about the importance of all of our federal fellowships?
So that is a strategy. What do we provide outside of just the financial support? And I think one of the main strategies at EPA that we're trying to message right now is the case for workforce development. Internally, we have to fight against the notion of just, that's the fellowship program, that's education, etc. But when you are talking about the next generation, you're talking about what this whole conference is about, workforce development, and not just for our specific agencies, but for the nation and where we need to be competitive. I'll say again, I don't like to say that, but I'll say, but that's the reality, and the importance of our programs individually and collectively is just that. That's what we're doing. It's critical, and that's what we are focusing on as far as our in-reach and our outreach. So that's one of those strategies. As far as budget, we just keep our fingers crossed just like everyone else.
If I may, our agency is unique in the fact that we provide formula funding to land-grant institutions through cooperative extension programs and agricultural experiment stations to different universities, normally known by their funding authority in the year thereof. So from Penn State to North Carolina A&T to Hispanic serving institutions and Native American and tribal serving institutions, they do receive money directly from our agency through formula funding as well. From a holistic perspective, though, part of the funding that we provide to institutions and overall that we use as a conduit to society is from kindergarten or pre-K all the way through postdoctorate. So when we look at the pipeline, if you will, what we've been looking at in our agency is what types of programs within STEM are we starting to offer, or do our partners throughout the country offer from the kindergarten and elementary school level, as well as to the postdoctorate level. Thank you.
And for our program, I think we're unique in the fact that as far as infrastructure in America, transportation still seems to be the sentinel organization. So we may get funding cut, but at some point there's a threshold level to maintain infrastructure which we were able to survive under. Also great data. We were able to prove that 85% of our recipients end up in the transportation field. We have SESs, GS-14s, GS-13s. So anytime I need a testimony, I go to someone they know and say, you need to talk about your experience in the program and how it propelled you to be where you are.
Any other questions, comments?